At the New Orleans Convention Center, Adam Schiff stepped onto the stage with the swagger of a man who believed the night already belonged to him. But what he hadn't counted on was Senator John Kennedy, calm, prepared, and quietly determined to uncover every uncomfortable truth until Schiff had nowhere left to stand. The auditorium wasn't buzzing with excitement like a concert or a sports final. It was tense, heavy, taut like a drawn bow. Cameramen made final lens checks. Political aides braced themselves. A shift was coming, and everyone knew it. Backstage, Kennedy sat alone in a chilly waiting room. His suit was slightly rumpled, glasses low on his nose. His hands rested on a small stack of worn files. They weren't many, but they carried weight. On the wall, a TV screen counted down to the live broadcast. 7 minutes. Down the hall, Schiff made his entrance. His laugh echoed, his handshakes were theatrical. His joke about Louisiana's heat got a few chuckles. His team trailed behind, some eager, some tense. In contrast, Kennedy's room was quiet. His campaign manager Michael peeked in. "Ready, Senator." "I've been ready for a while," Kennedy replied calmly. "You sure you want to dig into this tonight?" Kennedy ran a finger along the edge of the file stack. People forget what is done, but those his hurt don't. They live with it. Michael sighed. 2 hours. Just don't let him turn it into a circus. Kennedy gave a faint smile. "If he wants a circus, fine. I've got the congressional record." In the main hall, the crowd was full. The moderator stepped to the podium. "Good evening, Louisiana. Welcome to the national debate. Tonight, Senator Adam Schiff and Senator John Kennedy." Applause erupted. Schiff strode out first, waving, smiling, full of bravado. Kennedy followed, steady, nodding, no theatrics. He placed his file stack on the podium like something fragile. The moderator explained the rules. 2 hours. Alternate answers. No interruptions. Schiff smirked. The audience chuckled. Kennedy didn't move. His eyes scanned the crowd, unreadable. First question. "Senator Kennedy, what do you think is the greatest failure of the American political system?" He responded softly, firmly. "Political failure doesn't begin with the people. It begins behind closed doors, where deals benefit a few and the rest pay the price." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Schiff jumped in. "Oh, come on. The biggest failure is letting someone like him stand here pretending to understand government. I've defended democracy. I've served millions. What's he done? Talk." Some in the crowd laughed. Others looked at their phones. Kennedy didn't react. "Then, you say you defend democracy," Kennedy replied, "but sometimes, in the very actions you're proud of, you've harmed it too." The tone shifted. Subtle, but real. Schiff did what he does best, owned the room. Jokes. Jabs. Volume. "We had the strongest democracy. It was undermined. You lived through it," he shouted. "You don't need lectures from someone reading papers." Cheers followed, but less than expected. Kennedy stood still. When his turn came, he listed real issues. Stagnant wages, broken elections, ignored communities. Schiff mocked him again. Look at him reading his stack. Cute. You don't run a country with papers. You need guts. Fewer laughs this time. Kennedy replied, "Guts without reason will take you off a cliff." A pause. Then applause. The moderator shifted to ethics and accountability. Schiff attacked witch hunts, fake lawsuits, media bias. Then, casually, "I've settled a few things. Not because I was wrong, just easier. Big politicians do it all the time." That line, "just easier," hit Kennedy like a signal. He touched his file stack. Didn't open it. Just rested a hand on it. "Senator Kennedy," the moderator asked, "do you think compromising behavior matters in public ethics?" He looked at the moderator, the audience, then straight at the camera. "Most people don't get to settle things. When your rent goes up, you pay it. When your hours are cut, you tighten your belt. So yes, I think it matters." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The silence was powerful. Schiff tried to cut in. The moderator stopped him. His irritation showed, a flicker in his eyes. Schiff stumbled. His jokes faltered. His accusations got mixed reactions. One man in the front row even stood and walked out. No anger, just done. The energy began to shift. Not because Kennedy was louder. Because he was consistent. The next question: how do we rebuild trust in government? Kennedy took a breath. My father ran a grocery store in Baton Rouge. No big dreams. No fancy words. But when he sold you something, you trusted it. That's what Washington's lost. Even Schiff's team went quiet. My father worked until his legs gave out. I remember that every time I vote. Every time I see someone struggle while others abuse power. He turned to Schiff. Some of us don't get to cut a check and move on. Schiff looked away. Then Kennedy dropped a name. David. Worked in California. Lost his job after regulations you backed. You ignored his pleas. You dragged his lawsuit until he gave up. He settled to stay silent. Kennedy reached into his stack. Pulled one document. I've read dozens like David's, he said. People crushed by legal costs, forced into silence. Mary, fired while sick. Thomas, underpaid and gagged. Sarah, discriminated and silenced. He paused. You asked about leadership. Here's the truth. Who someone is behind closed doors, that's who they'll be in Congress. Schiff laughed. Forced. Come on. Everyone settles things. Even him. You think he hasn't? Kennedy didn't answer. He looked to the audience. There's a difference between quieting someone and crushing them. Most people know that. Silence again. Not awkward. But full. The kind of silence where truth sinks in, and no one dares look away. A woman in a red sweater, who hadn't clapped all night, now nodded. And for the first time, Adam Schiff didn't know what to say next. Moderator, Senator Kennedy, are you suggesting these cases directly influenced Senator Schiff's political decisions? Kennedy didn't hesitate. I'm saying, when you start using silence as currency, it changes how you see people. If you treat workers as disposable in politics, don't be surprised when you govern the same way. The room was silent. No applause. No reaction. Just the weight of attention. But Kennedy wasn't done. He had only just begun. The moderator shifted uncomfortably, caught between sticking to the schedule and recognizing something real was unfolding, something unscripted. Kennedy placed the page he'd just read face down, not stacking it with the rest. He left it there, like a marker. He flipped to another page, eyes scanning swiftly. Then he looked up. Mark was a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee you chaired in 2019. He sent an internal email warning that the committee was pushing a Trump-Russia narrative without solid evidence. He was told to keep quiet. Then he lost his job. His life spiraled. Finances, family, health, gone. Kennedy glanced at Schiff. Mark's community in Oakland blamed him for the fallout. He lost his job, his home, and eventually his health. The room held its breath. Schiff leaned toward the MIC. I don't know this person. If a mistake happened, maybe he wasn't doing his job. You can't blame every failure on me. That's how Washington works. Kennedy didn't flinch. No, that's how you work. He held up a copy of an old Oakland Tribune article. Headline: Congressional staffer fired after objecting to committee decision. No one remembers this, Kennedy said. Because it didn't happen in New York or DC. It happened in a forgotten corner. But it happened, and the damage doesn't leave when the cameras do. Moderator, Senator Kennedy, are these isolated incidents? Kennedy cut in. No, they're ignored. And I haven't even mentioned the veterans. That word, veterans, landed like a punch. Schiff shifted, reached for his water, took a sip. Kennedy pulled out more files, color-tabbed. A project in Fresno, California, supported by policies you backed, helped veterans recover from PTSD and addiction. They had a temporary lease. You ended it 6 months early, citing redevelopment. You promised relocation. You didn't follow through. Half ended up in shelters. 3 died. One of them was Henry. He looked into the camera. His son is watching tonight. The room froze. Schiff blinked. Kennedy set the document beside the others, forming a small but growing stack. "These aren't accidents," he said. "This is a pattern." Schiff leaned into the MIC again. "You don't know the full story. You cherry-pick papers and try to make me the villain. Thousands have benefited from my policies." Kennedy's tone remained calm. "I'm not trying to make you the villain. I'm making the victims visible." A moment passed. Then a quiet murmur. Not outrage. Not applause. Just reflection. A young man near the back stood, whispered to the person next to him, and walked out. Not angrily. Just gone. The moderator looked uncertain. "Moderator, Senator Schiff, would you like to respond?" Schiff waved it off. "He wants to relive old disputes. I want to talk about the future. Nobody cares about congressional drama from years ago." Kennedy raised an eyebrow. "Tell that to Henry's son." Then he flipped open another file. "This one's from Shreveport, Louisiana. A community relocation program you backed. Over 80 families signed up. Many sold their homes. Then the funding dried up. The project collapsed. You disappeared. The land sits empty. Some families never got their deposits back. One man died still trying." Kennedy looked up. "His daughter is here tonight." A gasp. Schiff's voice slowed. "That wasn't directly under my control. That was a local issue. If funds were mismanaged," Kennedy cut in, "you campaigned for it. You stood on TV and endorsed it. Your name was on the billboards. But when it failed, you vanished." Then another document. A transcript from a 2019 Sacramento hearing. Under oath, you were asked about complaints tied to a policy you pushed. You answered, and I quote, "That's not my problem. That's for local agencies." He paused. Leadership means taking responsibility, especially when it's hard. A single clap. Then a second. Then silence again. Schiff tried to regroup. Every leader lets someone down. That's the cost of making decisions. Kennedy leaned into the MIC. "No. That's the cost of how you make decisions." Then came the final document. A printed email. "This is from Nathan, a former staffer on your intelligence team. He warned that the Trump-Russia narrative was being exaggerated for political gain. He was fired. Later, he died of kidney failure. Couldn't afford treatment. His wife works at a hotel 3 blocks from here." Schiff's expression paled. "Moderator, we should take a break," Kennedy spoke first. "No." He turned to the audience. "Nathan didn't get a break. He worked until he couldn't. He trusted until he couldn't. And now, this man wants your vote, hoping you forget all this." He paused. "But I don't forget. And I won't pretend it never happened." Moderator nodded. "We'll move to closing statements. Senator Kennedy." But Schiff interrupted. "Look, I've served this country more than most could dream. Sure, some feel shortchanged. But I've defended democracy. I've made an impact." His voice cracked. Kennedy watched. Calm. Silent. Schiff pushed on. "What you've heard is cherry-picked drama. You think I'm the only one who's been sued? The only politician who's made tough calls? This is political theater. He's desperate. Building his name on my back." He turned to the audience. "You see through it, right?" But no one answered. A man rubbed his hands. A woman looked down. "Moderator, closing statements." "Senator Kennedy." Schiff interrupted again. "I've been attacked all my life. Fake news. Biased courts. Politicians like him. You know what they're afraid of. Me. I don't play their game. I don't bow." He gripped the podium. His voice trembled, not with confidence, not with fury, but something else. Then he staggered. His hand missed the podium center. He wobbled. Kennedy's expression stayed neutral. Eyes sharp. A staffer in a blue suit rushed in, whispering. Schiff waved him off, hands shaking. He was no longer in control, not of the room, not of the moment, not of the narrative. Moderator, gently, Senator, would you like to step backstage? Schiff blinked. Sweat on his brow. He adjusted his jacket, as if that could fix something. He stepped back, too quickly, and caught himself on the railing behind the podium. The audience was utterly silent. Cameras stayed live. An aide wearing a headset rushed in. They flanked him, gently guiding him toward the curtain. His movements were stiff, his breathing audible. At the edge of the curtain, he turned, not to the audience, not to the moderator, but to Kennedy. Kennedy didn't flinch, didn't move. Schiff held his gaze for too long, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Then he vanished behind the curtain. A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd, but no one knew what to do. The moderator cleared their throat, trying to steady the moment. We'll take a brief pause while Senator Schiff is checked on. Thank you for your patience. The broadcast stayed live. Kennedy calmly reached down and closed his stack of files. No theatrics, just the quiet end to a long string of silences. He looked at the audience, then at the moderator. I'm ready to finish my statement, he said. But the moment had already outgrown the room. The nation was reacting. This wasn't over. Kennedy stood still as backstage staff scrambled. No music, no announcements, just the heavy quiet of something unforgettable. A staffer stepped on stage, whispering into the moderator's earpiece. The moderator nodded and spoke. We've been informed that Senator Schiff is receiving medical attention. The debate will not continue. Thank you for your understanding. A low hum swept through the crowd like static. No one stood. No one clapped. They didn't know if it was over or just paused. Kennedy didn't leave. He took a breath. I didn't come here to make anyone stumble, he said. I came because too many already have. The camera stayed on him. I didn't spend weeks preparing this file to create a moment like this. I did it because someone has to speak the truth, where it can't be edited or buried in fine print. The words didn't feel rehearsed. They felt like conviction overwhelming caution. He stepped away from the podium and quietly walked toward his team. As he passed behind the curtain, his MIC caught his last words, spoken softly to Michael, his campaign manager. That was the moment. Not the stumble. Not the collapse. Not the silence. That. By the time Kennedy reached the dressing room, the footage had already gone viral. Dozens of accounts on X, YouTube reactions, TikTok edits, some dramatic, some sarcastic, some respectful. Even people who hadn't watched the debate had seen the screenshots, the quotes, the 15-second clips of Schiff being escorted away while Kennedy stood still. Late-night shows quickly reacted. One joked, when someone said the truth would set you free, they didn't mean off the stage. But on most channels, the tone was different, less funny, more stunned. A former senator told Fox News, it wasn't just a political moment. It was a reckoning. MSNBC was split. One called it character assassination. Another simply said, he didn't attack. He exposed. CNN focused on Schiff's condition. Some said exhaustion, others suggested overload. But even Schiff supporters were shaken. I used to support him, but I can't defend tonight, one post read. Why didn't he answer about the veterans? Kennedy didn't yell. He didn't mock. He just spoke. And people listened. Even veteran commentators admitted on air. Kennedy wasn't angry or preachy. He was prepared. By midnight, Kennedy's phone had 92 missed calls. His inbox was down. Messages poured in, from staff, old friends, a pastor in Baton Rouge, and a woman in Fresno who wrote, "Thank you for naming Henry. My brother worked with him." Kennedy sat on a bench outside the venue, staring at the concrete. Michael handed him a jacket. They're lining up for interviews, Fox, NBC, even PBS. Kennedy said nothing. They'll turn it into a circus, Michael warned. Focus on the collapse. The drama. Kennedy nodded slowly. Then we keep the focus on the people. The ones no one lets speak. Michael smiled. I don't think you need to worry about that anymore. Kennedy looked up. Michael showed him a message from a major newspaper editor. You didn't just show up. You changed the conversation. But Kennedy wasn't thinking about the conversation. He was thinking about a promise. The SUV ride to the hotel was quiet. No headlines, no talking. Just the dim glow of gas stations and pawn shop signs through the window. His phone kept buzzing. Michael had turned off the notifications, but the screen kept lighting up. Interview offers, support, and some threats. Debrief now or wait till morning? Michael asked. No debrief, Kennedy replied. I just want to think. At the hotel, Kennedy shrugged off his suit jacket, kicked off his shoes, sat at the edge of the bed and exhaled, not relief, but the breath you take when the world finally stops spinning. Michael stepped in, tablet in hand. Emails from ABC, Times-Picayune, and a local paper in Shreveport. I said we'd respond later. Kennedy wasn't listening. He looked at his hands, steady now. But earlier, right after Schiff's collapse, they had trembled. Not from nerves. From something deeper. You okay? Michael asked. Kennedy looked up. Remember the story I told you about my cousin? The one about losing the store? No, the other one. He pulled out a worn photo from his wallet. Faded. A man stood in front of a grocery store, holding a little girl. This is Jimmy. He ran a shop in Monroe. Crushed by a policy Schiff backed. He worked hard. Opened early. Closed late. But when the financial support stopped, he flipped the photo. Jimmy and Lily. Summer before the store closed. He wrote to Schiff's office. No reply. By the time he got a lawyer, the paperwork was gone. He lost the store. The house. Started drinking. His wife left. And Lily? Michael asked. She's a single mom in Lafayette. She never had a chance. And Jimmy? He died in a rented apartment above a hardware store. No one came to the funeral, except me and his mechanic. He tucked the photo back into his wallet. So when I say this isn't politics, Kennedy said, I mean it. Every time they call me dramatic or too conservative, I think about how many Jimmys are still out there. Michael nodded. You said it tonight. Kennedy shook his head. Not loud. Just clear. Silence. Then Michael asked, Want to watch the news? No, Kennedy said. I know what it looks like. I just hope they see what matters. He wrote something on the hotel notepad, tucked it into his file stack, and went to bed. Before dawn, Kennedy stood by the window, barefoot on the carpet, watching New Orleans wake up. No noise. No debate. Just the world breathing. Michael arrived with coffee. They're calling it the most consequential political moment of the decade. Kennedy raised an eyebrow. Who's they? Michael grinned and showed his tablet. Fox News. CBS. Times-Picayune. All led with the same image. Kennedy at the podium. Files open. Eyes steady. Schiff collapsing behind him. No caption needed. I don't want the collapse to be the story, Kennedy said. I want it to be about the people. Michael replied, It's both. But your story, it's taking root. He showed Kennedy a message from Face the Nation offering a full segment. And beneath it, one more message. I'm Henry's son. You said my dad's name. I didn't think anyone would. Just wanted to say thank you. I cried last night. I think he'd be proud. Kennedy stared at it for a long time, then whispered, he should never have been forgotten. The letter that mattered most, the campaign office had forwarded it. On the back of the envelope, written in uneven block letters, were the words, Mom told me to write to the man who tells the truth. John Kennedy opened it slowly. Inside was a letter in bright blue ink, written on lined notebook paper. At the top was a wobbly drawing of stars and a big heart. The handwriting was unmistakably that of a child. Dear Mr. John, my name is MIA. I'm 10 years old. Mom told me to watch you last night, even though it was a grown-up show, because you were brave and didn't yell. She says that's rare. I liked that you didn't talk to hurt people. You talked like you had to tell the truth. My dad used to work at a place that didn't pay him for 2 months. We had to move. Mom cried a lot. I want to thank you. I think you stood up for people like us. Love, MIA. Kennedy didn't cry. He just sat still, letting every word settle into him like a quiet echo, something deeper than applause, deeper than politics. He folded the letter with care and placed it beside the old photograph of his cousin Jimmy. A buzz broke the silence. Michael had texted. 7 million views from official sources alone. It's on every channel. But Kennedy barely glanced at it. He had spoken on national television before, debated, testified, faced pressure. But this moment was different. Not because a rival had stumbled. Not because the cameras had stayed live. Because a 10-year-old girl named MIA had watched and believed. Kennedy picked up the hotel notepad and wrote quietly to himself, not a reply, there was no return address, but a line he wanted to carry: the truth isn't the loudest voice. It's the one still standing when others fall. He tucked that note behind the worn stack of files in his briefcase. The stack, now tattered and mostly empty, wasn't going to be stored away. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder. Because the truth wasn't just in the files. It lived in names like Jimmy, Henry, Nathan, Mary, Thomas, and now MIA. John Kennedy hadn't come to destroy anyone. He had come to speak for those who were never handed a MIC. For losses no news outlet would cover. For stories buried under bureaucracy, legal silence, or shame. And though this media storm would soon pass, though the headlines would move on, something real had started. People were listening, differently now. In a divided America where debates often collapse into noise, the nation had heard something else, a voice that didn't shout. And that mattered. Reflections on truth and accountability. John Kennedy's quiet but powerful confrontation with Adam Schiff during the New Orleans debate wasn't just a political event. It was a mirror held up to the soul of a country. Through a simple stack of files, full of real names and real lives, Kennedy didn't just criticize. He revealed. He remembered. The story of MIA, a young girl moved to write a letter simply because someone told the truth, shows us what kind of leadership still matters in 2025. In a time of division and misinformation, this story carries a timeless message. Tell the truth. Speak for the forgotten. And never underestimate the power of listening. Whether you're a student, a worker, a voter, or a leader, you have a voice. Use it not for noise, but for clarity, for honesty, for people like Jimmy, like MIA. John Kennedy didn't raise his voice. He raised truth, and someone heard him.